All right, let's talk about Andrew Cuomo now. His resignation not quieting the calls for impeachment, and it did not do anything to stop an Albany County Sheriff's criminal investigation into these allegations. Sheriff Craig Apple says the development changes nothing with his inquiry. He tells the Albany Times-Union, quote, "It was never about his office, although I appreciate him putting the people of New York first and stepping aside." The last New York governor to finish out his term without scandal was George Pataki back in 2006, and Cuomo now bowing out like his two predecessors. Then New York Attorney General Andrew Cuomo took out Eliot Spitzer amid his prostitution scandal. Spitzer's successor, David Paterson, was also brought down by, you guessed it, Attorney General Andrew Cuomo. He was investigating Paterson for witness tampering and bribery. Allegations that sounded more severe than they actually were. Now, Cuomo's resignation has opened the door wide open for the 2022 governor's race in New York. Here are some of the potential successors waiting in the wings: Al Sharpton, AOC, Bill de Blasio, and even Letitia James, of course. Let's welcome in New York Congresswoman Claudia Tenney, also with us, former New York Congressman Peter King. You guys were so great together last week. We thought we'd bring you back together for more discussion on this. Great to have you both with us.
Well, don't overdo it. You know, Claudia and I may go at it. You never know.
Okay. Well, we'll see. We'll hold on for the fireworks. But let's talk about these potential successors. I mean, obviously, the lieutenant governor will be the next to take over. But there are a whole bunch of folks who want that job. AOC, Al Sharpton. Seriously, Claudia, these are, Congresswoman, I should say, these are some of the names being floated out there. I saw the New York Times quoted Al Sharpton as saying he's been approached by this. Is anyone really seriously considering Al Sharpton?
Well, if you looked at my Twitter feed yesterday, I said, look, I wanted Andrew Cuomo. I've been out calling for his resignations since 2014 with the public corruption scandal, where he created a commission, weaponized it against members of the Assembly and the Senate, and it ended up in scandal with him, where he's the one who shut it down because it got too close to his scandals, and one of his best friends ended up in jail. So I've been calling for his resignation on a number of issues. New York's in terrible condition. But when you look at the choices, be careful what you wish for, because the bench and the Democratic side is not good, and it's not going to be a great alternative for us. Hopefully, we will get one of our Republican candidates elected next year, and the people will come to their senses, although we haven't had a statewide winner since Governor George Pataki in 2002. Maybe New Yorkers have seen enough destruction from the Cuomo family that it's time to elect a Republican again.
Well, your race proved that not every Republican moved out of New York, Congresswoman, but we know a lot of people have moved out. And, Congressman King, does a Republican, we've got Andrew Giuliani running. We also have Congressman Lee Zeldin running. Does a Republican or moderate Democrat stand a chance? Rob Astorino's on the screen there.
Yeah, they do. And as Claudia said, a lot of that's because people are really getting fed up with Democrats. They've seen what it was with Eliot Spitzer. They've seen what it was with Andrew Cuomo. So I think Republicans have a chance. I'm supporting Lee Zeldin myself. I think he'd be an outstanding candidate. We have to get our message to people. But, some of those candidates you mentioned, there's others like Jumaane Williams, a far left progressive, the public advocate in New York City. I mean, they have a whole range of left-wing progressives who want to run. And now I happen to know Kathy Hochul fairly well. She was on the Homeland Security Committee when I was the chairman, and she was in Congress. I found her a reasonable person to work with. Listen, I would oppose her on many issues, but at least she seems normal. And she had been a centrist. She's gone over to the left. She's been involved with Andrew Cuomo. But even though I say involved, the fact is I think she was frozen out of the Cuomo administration several years ago. The word is he tried to actually push her off the ticket back in 2018. So I'm hoping that at least she can get started, and we can wish her well as New Yorkers. But I think she would face real opposition in the primary from the progressives. And her chance would be, if you have all these progressives running, she may end up being like Eric Adams, right, and the one somewhat centrist candidate who emerges.
And, maybe it might even take that because, it does seem that there's a limit to how much the people of New York are willing to take. And that's reading into the Eric Adams selection. Democrats there don't want a, Justice Democrat. Let's also talk about what happens with the nursing home investigation and the book deal investigation. Two other scandals here. There was also a recent New York Times article called How Andrew Cuomo's Book Became a Cautionary Tale. So there's some concerns about state resources being used to write the book, but according to the New York Times, for the week ending July 31st, Cuomo's book had only sold 71 hardcover copies. So, Congresswoman, if there is a scandal involving this book, the publisher didn't get their money's out of it, and it's kind of embarrassing for Andrew Cuomo. 71 copies for the week ending July 31st, according to the New York Times. Not great.
Well, when the media and these publishers create false images like they have with Andrew Cuomo for years, I mean, he does a great show. He won an Emmy as well. So everyone thought, oh, great, we've created this image of a person who seems to be what we want. But when you tear off the surface, you just get more surface with Andrew Cuomo. And you get a guy who's really just diabolical in many ways, who really never had the talent. And I'll quote my former colleague, Steve McLaughlin, he's half as smart and twice as mean as his father was. And he did a terrible job as governor. And so, both of them have wreaked havoc on the state of New York for many years. But this big book deal should be a lesson to all these publishers who, for example, refuse to publish books by Republicans,
right,
because they don't think they're going to sell. But some of them are selling famously well across the country.
Yeah, Josh Hawley's book comes to mind. Congressman King, I know you've been talking about this too. This is, it's a book, and we mock the Emmy Award and everything like that. But, just like yesterday, when you see Andrew Cuomo's defense attorney using, taxpayer-funded resources to defend himself, I mean, and at a certain point, it looks bad.
Yeah, and to me, the whole issue with the book is, first of all, even if he had done everything well during the pandemic, to be writing a book while thousands of New Yorkers are dying all around you, to me, was bad form to begin with. The fact that he was writing the book at a time when his administration was covering up the nursing home deaths and apparently submitting false records to the federal government, which could be a criminal act, and then getting $5 million for it, you put all that together, and to me, this is so tarnished. This whole deal with the book, and I'm not minimizing any of the allegations that were found in the Attorney General's report, but to me, the 15,000 deaths in the nursing homes, combining that with the fact that he was using his staff instead of working on the nursing home to put together a book which was fictitious and using state resources and getting $5 million for it, to me, that is certainly much more culpable.
Yeah, well, we'll see where that goes. We know there are promises to continue perhaps with impeachment and also some of those investigations. All right, let's talk about infrastructure here. This massive spending plan, $3.5 trillion. That's on top of what was passed yesterday. Here is House Speaker Nancy Pelosi talking about the future plans for Democrats.
They passed it, but until we see the budget, it goes in the Senate first, then it comes to the House, and then we send it back as a reconciliation. And reconciliation will be a fuller reflection of our values to build back better.
$3.5 trillion to reflect their values. Congresswoman, Nancy Pelosi is going to potentially gum up the works here with this whole thing. What are Republicans planning to do to stop this?
Well, I hope that they're going to propose amendments and try to get some reasonable, or the new standard is normal Democrats, as stated by my colleague Peter King, some normal Democrats to realize that, this all sounds like fun and games, but when you look at the actual cost based and adding inflation over the years, this infrastructure bill and tied with the new reconciliation is 4 times larger than FDR's New Deal back, in the beginning of the welfare state. This is really a disaster. It's filled with climate initiatives. And I come from New York State, where I can't emphasize enough that we do have problems with our infrastructure. And it's largely because of the Cuomos, because most of the roads in New York State are local roads, and they've been failed to be funded. The local roads funding has been probably at flat or even less than flat funding over the years without accounting for inflation. But yet we're implementing the Green New Deal and all kinds of so-called human infrastructure and the infrastructure side of it. I think it's going to be a disaster. New Yorkers are suffering already with high prices and inflation. This could really hurt us in the long run.
Yeah, especially if you start seeing more electric vehicles in the federal government's fleet before you start seeing those potholes getting fixed. I mean, that's what people know as infrastructure, roads and bridges. I'm not so sure about electric cars, Congressman King. And then, there are obviously concerns about inflation here as it relates to this. But, in all your years of working in government, Congressman King, could you have imagined that they'd be talking about $3.5 trillion like it's no big deal? Oh, we'll just do it in a, resolution, reconciliation. Just $3.5 trillion. That's it.
This is the most extravagant overreach I can imagine. I mean, this is just goes beyond anything. And also, what they're doing is they're distorting the English language. And Claudia and I agree. We need more infrastructure. We certainly need it in New York. but let's confine it to infrastructure. They can find anything that could perhaps help human development anywhere suddenly becomes part of infrastructure. And that is, it's lying to the American people, it's distorting it. And we should be focusing on the infrastructure and realizing that somebody has to pay for this. There is going to be inflation. Listen, no one's saying we're going to have a balanced budget today or tomorrow. But the fact is, we have to start to rein in the spending, and we have to confine it to infrastructure, which could, in the end, end up bringing revenues back into the country by encouraging the economy, by moving the economy forward. But these wild schemes they have, which are just really variations of AOC, are, to me, really, really bad.
Yeah, we're hearing about reports from Elizabeth Warren and Angus King about a windfall profits tax on corporations as well. Those tax increases are coming sooner or later if this does get through there. Great to see you both, Congresswoman Claudia Tenney and former Congressman Peter King. We appreciate it, guys. Thanks so much.
Always great,
Thank
Claudia.
you.
Hey, I'm Rob Finnerty. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please join the conversation in the comments below. Don't forget to subscribe, too. Hit the bell icon to be alerted to breaking news. And remember, there's a whole lot more on Newsmax TV, America's fastest growing cable news network. Newsmax TV, we're real news for real people.